In my previous life, I was framed by my ex-wife Gu Jiaojiao and her idealized lover working in concert. My company was stolen, I was drowning in debt, and finally, filled with hatred, I jumped to my death. I opened my eyes to find I had been reborn 10 years earlier, on the very day of my engagement banquet. Reborn and returned. Revenge? Riches. This lifetime, I'll rewrite the ending myself. Leveraging memories from my past life, I precisely targeted the stock market, frantically accumulating wealth. I laid traps in secret, letting my greedy ex-wife walk right into them. And I personally tore off the hypocritical masks of that despicable couple. When the flames of vengeance consumed everything, I stood atop my business empire, laughing coldly. Those who betrayed me, I will make your lives a living hell. I plummeted from the sky, the wind whistling past my ears, flashes of Gu Jiaojiao and Zhou Hao's triumphant smiles before my eyes. Qi Shuyong, did you really think you were so great? Your company, your fortune, it's all ours now. Gu Jiaojiao, her fingers coated in bright red nail polish, gently swirled a glass of red wine. My own prized 82 Lafite. Thank you for taking care of things these past few years. Zhou Hao had his arm around my wife's waist, the corner of his mouth curled into a sneer. Don't worry, I'll manage your company well, until I've squeezed it dry. The ground rushed closer. Thump! I snapped my eyes open, cold sweat soaking my back. The familiar chandelier, the familiar ceiling. This was the bedroom of my apartment from 10 years ago. The digital clock on the bedside table read, May 18th, 2013. My hand trembled as I touched my face. No wrinkles, no stubble. I rushed to the bathroom mirror. Staring back was a young, 30-year-old face. Reborn? Back 10 years in the past. My phone suddenly rang. The name flashing on the screen made my stomach clench. Just seeing it now turned my stomach. Gu Jiaojiao. Qi Shuyong, where are you? The engagement banquet is about to start. Everyone's waiting for you. The voice, sweet in my memory, but nauseating now, came through the receiver. Be right there. I answered curtly and hung up. Standing at the hotel entrance, I took a deep breath. In my previous life, this day marked the beginning of my rise to glory and also the starting point of my descent into hell. Now, fate had given me a chance to start over. The moment the banquet hall doors opened, camera flashes assaulted my eyes. Gu Jiaojiao, in a white dress, radiant as a flower, looped her arm through mine. Her fingers were ice cold. I once thought it was nervousness. Now I understood there had never been any love in it. Friends and family, thank you all for coming to Jiaojiao's and my engagement banquet. I raised my glass to give a toast, my gaze sweeping across the room. In a corner, I spotted Zhou Hao, watching my fiancée with an ambiguous gaze. So, they had gotten together this early. Taking this opportunity, I shifted gears. I like to share some good news on the financial front. According to my analysis, the price of gold will plummet by over 20% within the next 3 months, while the A-share market will bottom out in mid-June and then rebound. The room erupted in murmurs. Many present were business people and knew how bold such a prediction was. Mr. Qi, are you so certain? Uncle Liu, the CFO of Gu Corporation, asked with a smile. Gold has been trending very strong lately. Why don't we make a bet? I smiled. If I'm wrong, I'll return double the amount of every red envelope received today. The crowd laughed, thinking it was just a joke to liven things up. Only I knew this was a small cheat afforded by my rebirth. In June 2013, the U.S. Federal Reserve would announce a tapering of QE, triggering a historic crash in gold prices. Meanwhile, the A-share market would hit 1849 points on June 25th before starting a major rally. My eyes met Zhou Hao's in the corner briefly. A flicker of malice crossed his. In my past life, this seemingly gentle and refined man had ultimately stolen everything from me with a meticulously designed trap. Gu Jiaojiao pinched my arm lightly and whispered, "What are you doing? Talking about such boring things." I smiled, put my arm around her waist, and murmured in her ear, "Darling, this is just the beginning." Seeing her puzzled expression, I added silently in my heart, "Asterisk what you owe me, I will take back with interest this lifetime." Asterisk. Midway through the banquet, I accidentally bumped into Gu Jiaojiao, and Zhou talking intimately in a corner of the terrace. Seeing me, the two quickly separated, a flash of panic crossing Gu Jiaojiao's face. "Mr. Zhou, I've heard so much about you." I proactively extended my hand. "Jiaojiao often mentions you, her old classmate." My pronunciation wasn't quite right. I'd misspoken the word for classmate. Zhou deliberately tightened his grip as we shook hands, his eyes holding a challenge. "Mr. She is young and promising. Jiaojiao is fortunate." "Yes, she certainly is very fortunate," I replied meaningfully, watching the subtle shifts in their expressions and sneering inwardly. "Reborn, I won't be fooled by your hypocritical masks again. This lifetime, the roles of hunter and prey are about to be reversed." The tingle of champagne bubbles from the engagement party still lingered in my throat, yet I was already settled in the driver's seat. Outside the car window, neon lights cast long, colorful reflections on the rain-slicked pavement. "Urgent business at the company?" Gu Jiaojiao clung to the car window, a stray lock of her styled hair falling across her forehead. "But so many guests are still here." I pinched the bridge of my nose, feigning exhaustion and apology. "Just got a call. Something came up with Mingsheng that requires my personal attention." I delivered the excuse without batting an eyelid. Mingsheng Capital was indeed a project I was negotiating, but it was far from being critically urgent. Gu Jiaojiao's red lips pressed into a thin line. In my past life, I would have mistaken this for concern. Now, I knew it was merely annoyance that her plans were disrupted. "Go on, then." She finally let go, her nails scraping faintly against the car door. "Don't work too hard." In the rearview mirror, her figure shrank until she was quickly swallowed by the guests surging forward to exchange pleasantries. As soon as I turned the corner, I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't contacted in 3 years. "Hello." The voice on the other end was heavy with sleep. "Zhao Feng, it's me, Qi Xuyong." Silence hung on the line for a few seconds, followed by a rustling sound, as if someone had suddenly sat up in bed. "Holy shit, Qi Xuyong." Zhao Feng sounded much more awake now. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" I glanced at the dashboard clock, 12:40 a.m. The last time I saw Zhao Feng in my previous life was at his funeral. The genius hacker had been silenced, his death disguised as a car accident, because he'd helped me dig up dirt on Zhou Hao. "I need your help." I got straight to the point. "It's urgent." The click of a lighter sounded over the phone, followed by Zhao Feng taking a drag. "All right, spit it out. What could possibly make the great young Master Qi call me in the middle of the night?" "Two things." I turned the steering wheel, guiding the car onto a quiet side street. "First, check the recent fund movements in all accounts under my name. Second, investigate 2 people, Gu Jiaojiao and Zhou Hao." "Zhou Hao?" Zhao Feng exhaled smoke. "Wait, isn't Gu Jiaojiao your fiancé? What are you?" "The wedding might be off," I said calmly, pulling over in front of a 24-hour coffee shop. Zhao Feng let out a low whistle. "Interesting. Same old procedure? Send the data to your encrypted email?" "Yes." I paused. "Zhao Feng, be careful this time. Leave no trace." "Hey, are you questioning my professionalism?" he retorted, half joking, but I heard the underlying seriousness. "I'll have something for you within 3 days." After hanging up, I pushed open the door to the coffee shop. It was deserted at this hour, save for a college student hunched over a laptop in the corner, likely pulling an all-nighter on a paper. I ordered a black coffee and opened my laptop. The screen's blue glow illuminated my face as I logged into my online banking and began meticulously checking my financial status. The more I looked, the tighter I clenched my jaw. Gu Jiaojiao had moved faster than I'd imagined. At some point, my 3 bank cards had been linked to her phone number. Over 2 million yuan from my stock account had been transferred out last week. The transaction brazenly labeled wedding house renovation funds. Most alarmingly, both the company's official seal and my personal seal were recorded as having been borrowed, signed out by none other than Gu Jiaojiao. The coffee cup trembled slightly in my hand. In my past life, I hadn't discovered the erosion of my finances until after the wedding. I hadn't expected her to start so early this time. "Sir, would you like a refill?" The waiter's question broke my train of thought. I shook my head and closed the laptop. Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten. A new day was dawning, and the curtain was rising on my revenge. 3 days later, I sat in the company conference room. The documents Zhao Feng had sent spread out before me. A thick stack of papers, densely covered with call logs, bank statements, and screenshots of social media chats. "Your fiancé is quite something," Zhao Feng remarked, sitting opposite me with his legs crossed, swiping a finger across his tablet. "Look at this." He slid the tablet over. On the screen was a surveillance screenshot of Gu Jiaojiao and Zhou Hao at a hotel reception desk. The date stamp was from 2 weeks ago, the night I was away on business in Shenzhen. "There's more explosive stuff. Want to see?" Zhao Feng raised an eyebrow. I waved him off, my stomach churning. Even though I'd braced myself, seeing the proof still made my temples throb. "What about the financials?" I changed the subject. Zhao Feng's expression immediately turned professional. "The 3 properties under your name have all been mortgaged. The loans haven't been disbursed yet, but the paperwork is nearly complete. But the real kicker is this." He pulled out a document. "Your fiancé registered a shell company in your name. You're the legal representative, and the shareholders are her and her father." I let out a cold laugh. Identical tactics to my past life, just executed at least 6 months earlier. Gu Jiaojiao couldn't wait to bleed me dry. "Oh, right. That Zhou Hao you had me look into. His background is interesting." Zhao Feng lowered his voice. "On the surface, he's an elite returnee, but he's actually connected to that loan shark gang in the West District. There was an accidental death at a construction site last year. His name popped up in the police files, but the case eventually went cold." I nodded. This information matched my memories from my past life. Zhou Hao's underworld connections were the key to how he ultimately seized my company. Keep monitoring them, especially their financial transactions. I took an envelope from the drawer and slid it across. "Here's the retainer." Zhao Feng felt the thickness of the envelope and whistled. "Looks like you're serious." "Never more serious." I gazed out the window. The sunlight was bright, but it couldn't penetrate the darkness in my heart. The weekend family dinner arrived as scheduled. The aroma of braised pork drifted through the Gu family villa. Gu's father sat at the head of the table, projecting the image of a benevolent elder. "Ah, little Chi, have you two decided on the wedding invitation style?" Gu's mother placed a piece of fish in my bowl. "Time is tight. You need to hurry." I smiled and nodded. "We're working on it. Jiaojiao likes the European style, so we chose the one with gold foil embossing." "Good, good." Gu's father took a sip of wine. "By the way, that investment I mentioned last time, how are you thinking about it?" "Old Lu's resort project is a guaranteed profit." My chopsticks paused slightly. In my past life, this so-called guaranteed profit project had swallowed over $6 million of my money, and I never saw so much as a brick in return. "I've asked finance to do a risk assessment. We should have the results next week," I answered flawlessly. Gu Jiaojiao kicked me under the table, though her face wore a sweet smile. "Dad, Xiyang's been busy with company matters lately. Don't rush him." "Ah, I'm just thinking about you two's future." Gu's father waved his hand dismissively. "Once you're married, you're one family. No need to distinguish between yours and mine." Those words sounded familiar. He'd said the same thing in my past life before gradually turning everything I owned into their family's shared property, which eventually all fell into the hands of Gu Jiaojiao and Zhou Hao. After dinner, Gu Jiaojiao pulled me onto the balcony to look at the moon. The night breeze was cool. Her hand rested on my forearm, her nails lightly scraping my skin. "Zhou Hao is organizing a get-together tomorrow night, some old classmates. You should come too." She tilted her face up at me, her eyes reflecting the balcony lights like tiny flames. "Okay," I agreed readily, though my mind was crystal clear. I hadn't attended this classmate gathering in my past life. When Gu Jiaojiao returned, her collar carried the scent of unfamiliar cologne. The next evening, I arrived punctually. The gathering was at a Japanese izakaya in a very private room. As I pushed the door open, Zhou Hao was leaning close to Gu Jiaojiao's ear, saying something that made them both double over with laughter. Seeing me enter, Zhou Hao immediately stood up and extended his hand. "CEO Chi, we've been waiting." I grasped his hand, feeling the deliberate pressure he applied. In my past life, I would have interpreted this as masculine rivalry. Now, I recognized it as a victor's taunt towards his prey. "Mr. Zhou, you're too kind." I applied equal force, releasing only when I saw a slight twitch in the corner of his eye. After 3 rounds of drinks, the atmosphere livened up. I coolly observed the interactions between Gu Jiaojiao and Zhou Hao. She accidentally spilled sake on his cuff. He naturally used a napkin to wipe a smudge of sauce from the corner of her mouth. To onlookers, these small actions might seem like the familiarity of old classmates. But to me, Reborn, they were riddled with clues. CEO Qi, in the investment business, what do you value most? Zhou Hao suddenly directed the conversation towards me. Information, I said, sipping my sake. Knowing what others don't allows you to gain what others can't. A flicker passed through Zhou Hao's eyes before he quickly smiled. Insightful. Does CEO Qi have any insider information to share recently? I set down my cup, pausing deliberately. I hear the land in the West District is being rezoned. Now's the perfect time to buy in. This was a probe. In my past life, Zhou Hao had made a fortune flipping land based on insider information, the source of which was linked to a construction site fatality. Zhou Hao's expression froze instantly, though he quickly composed himself. I didn't miss the flicker of caution in his eyes. It's best to be cautious about such rumors. He casually steered the conversation away, turning to offer Gu Jiaojiao a piece of sashimi. I smiled and raised my glass, understanding dawning within me. The prey had scented danger, but the hunter's net was only just beginning to be woven. The trading hall of the securities firm buzzed with voices, red and green numbers flickering constantly on the electronic screens. I sat on a leather sofa in the VIP room, holding a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Mr. Qi, are you certain you want to go all in on Huachong technology? My account manager, Xiao Li, pushed up his glasses, fine beads of sweat dotting his forehead. This stock's fundamentals are mediocre. It's been dropping recently, and analysts rate it underperform. This one, I signed my name on the subscription form, the pen tip nearly tearing the paper. 2 million shares, buy at market price. Xiao Li looked like he wanted to say more, but ultimately took the form to process it. I gazed out the window. The May sunlight stung my eyes. In my previous life, at this exact moment, I was busy planning my wedding and missed out on this demon stock. It would skyrocket fourfold in 3 weeks due to a military contract. My phone vibrated. A message from Gu Jiaojiao popped up on the screen. Mom and Dad want us over for dinner tonight. Don't forget that bottle of red wine you promised, Dad. I replied with okay, my lips pulling down involuntarily at the corners. In my past life, that bottle of 1982 Lafite ended up in Zhou Hao's stomach. Mr. Qi, the transaction is complete. Xiao Li returned with the settlement slip, his voice trembling slightly. But, are you absolutely sure you don't want to reconsider? I took the slip and glanced at the cost price, 673 yuan per share. According to my memory, it would break 20 yuan on the first trading day of June. By this time next week, you'll be buying me dinner. I patted Xiao Li's shoulder. He looked completely bewildered. Leaving the securities firm, I turned into an electronics store next door. Behind the counter, a young man with a small ponytail was dismantling a laptop. I need a micro tracker, the kind used for tracing fund transfers, I said, keeping my voice low. The young man didn't even look up. Don't have any. Zhao Feng sent me. His fingers paused. He looked up, sizing me up. A friend of old Zhao's? He then pulled a metal box, the size of a USB drive, from a drawer. Link it to an account, and the flow of any funds passing through it will be uploaded in real time to a designated server. Supports multi-hop tracing. How much? 8,000. Non-negotiable. I paid directly via QR code scan. The metal box felt heavy in my palm. This would be the first landmine I planted between Gu Jiaojiao and Zhou Hao. Dinner at the Gu residence was as lavish as ever. Gu's father held up the bottle of Lafite, examining it against the light. Excellent wine. Xiao Qi has good taste. He poured me half a glass with a smile. Heard you've been playing the stock market recently. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Gu Jiaojiao's ear twitch slightly. Just as I thought, she had been monitoring my finances. Just dabbling. I took a sip of wine. Put some spare cash into Huachong technology. Huachong. Gu's father frowned. Isn't that factory about to go bankrupt? Gu Jiaojiao cut in. Qi Shuyong, didn't you promise me you wouldn't touch stocks? Her voice was sickly sweet, but her fingers pinched my thigh sharply. It's only 2 million. If I lose it, Consider it tuition fees, I said, deliberately sounding nonchalant. 2 million. Gu's mother dropped her chopsticks. Gu's father's expression instantly soured. Gu Jiaojiao's eyes widened. Where did you get that much money? The down payment for our wedding house. Relax, it's not the house money. I smiled and took her hand, feeling how cold her palm was. It's returns from a previous investment. The atmosphere at the table immediately grew awkward. Gu's father cleared his throat. It's good for young people to be investment savvy, but you should still listen to your elder's advice. Dad's right. I nodded humbly, but inwardly I was counting down. 9 more days until Huachong Technology released that game-changing announcement. After dinner, Gu Jiaojiao pulled me out onto the balcony. In the nightlight, the lines of her profile looked exceptionally sharp. Qi Shuyong were still 5 million short for the renovation costs of the wedding house. She laid her cards on the table. Since you have spare cash for stocks, why not use it for this first? I feigned hesitation. But this Huachong stock. Sell it, she interrupted. The house is what's real, tangible. Don't you want to get married sooner? Under the moonlight, her eyes glistened with moisture. In my past life, these are the eyes that deceived me for a lifetime. I took a deep breath and put on a look of compromise. All right, I'll transfer it to you tomorrow. Her face immediately bloomed into a radiant smile. She kissed my cheek. I knew you loved me the most. Back in my apartment, I took the metal box from the safe. Following the instructions, I linked it to an account under one of my subsidiary companies. Tomorrow, this account would transfer 5 million to Gu Jiaojiao, and the destination of every single cent would be laid bare. The blue light from the computer screen reflected on my face. The latest email from Zhao Phone contained detailed information on Zhou Hao. I clicked open a surveillance video clip. Zhou Hao was in an underground casino, chatting amiably with several tattooed men. One bald man was particularly conspicuous, a notorious underworld boss from the west side, nicknamed Scarface Chong. I hit pause and zoomed in. Zhou Hao handed Scarface Chong a thick envelope, and the man gave him a car key in return. In my past life, a month before my company went bankrupt, parking lot surveillance captured this car. I thought it belonged to an ordinary client at the time, but now. Suddenly, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Is this Mr. Qi Shuyong? A gentle female voice. This is the secretarial office of the Qin Corporation. Old Mr. Qin would like to invite you to a charity gala tomorrow evening. My grip on the phone tightened. Qin Jiangwo, a titan of the financial world. The elder who had extended a helping hand to me during my hardest times in my previous life. We were supposed to meet 3 years later at a forum. It would be my honor, I heard myself say. The ballroom at the Peninsula Hotel was resplendent. I wore my most expensive suit, yet my palms were slightly sweaty. What old Mr. Qin liked, what he disliked. It took me 3 years in my past life to figure it out. Now, I had to act as if we were old acquaintances upon first meeting. Mr. Qi, a female secretary, led me toward a lounge area deeper within the ballroom. Old Mr. Qin is waiting for you. Qin Jiangwo sat on a mahogany chair. Though 70 years old, his posture was still ramrod straight. He looked up, sizing me up, his gaze sharp as a torch. Young man, have we met before? I've long admired your esteemed name, Mr. Qin, but never had the fortune to meet you. I gave a slight bow. Your article on blockchain in last month's Financial Review was incredibly insightful. I learned a great deal. Old Mr. Qin raised an eyebrow. That article was published under a pseudonym. How did you know it was me? Damn it, I slipped up. He wouldn't publicly acknowledge writing that piece for another 3 years. Thinking quickly, I improvised. My father met you once, sir. He mentioned this habit of yours. And your father is... Qi Jianhua. I stated my father's name, my heart pounding. In my past life, old Mr. Qin had told me he and my father were university classmates. Old Mr. Qin's expression changed instantly. Jinhua's son. He motioned for me to sit. Is he well? My father passed away 10 years ago, I said softly. It was the truth, though I had never determined the cause of his death. Old Mr. Qin was silent for a long moment, then suddenly asked, Are you fond of Zisha teapots? My heart skipped a beat. I had accidentally learned in my past life that old Mr. Qin was one of the country's top collectors of Zisha teapots, a fact he rarely disclosed. I know a little, especially Master Gu Jiaojiao's squirrel and grapes pot. It's truly a masterpiece. Old Mister. Qin's eyes lit up. We chatted about Zisha teapots for half an hour until his secretary came to remind him it was time for a speech. Come to my home for tea this weekend. As I was leaving, Old Mister. Qin patted my shoulder. I have some aged tea, the kind Jinwei used to love. I bowed in thanks and nearly bumped into someone as I turned. Looking up, I saw Zhou Hao holding a champagne flute, watching me with a smirk. CEO Qi, fancy meeting you here. He raised his glass. Didn't expect you to be so passionate about charity. I noticed the guest pin on his suit was silver, just a regular invited guest, whereas the one pinned to my chest was the special gold VIP badge provided by Old Mister. Qin, does Mr. Zhou also have an interest in Zisha teapots? I asked deliberately. His smile froze for a second. I prefer red wine. By the way, Jiaojiao mentioned you two are planning the wedding. Yes, thanks to her handling everything. I pretended not to detect the probing tone in his words. Oh, right. I heard that new development in the west side is yours. Nice location. A flicker of alarm crossed Zhou Hao's eyes. Just a small project. CEO Qi is certainly well informed. It's an occupational hazard for someone in investments. I smiled and clinked glasses with him. Hope the construction quality is up to par. After all, lives are at stake, right? His glass trembled slightly, spilling a few drops of champagne onto his cuff. I politely excused myself. As I walked out of the hotel, the hot June wind hit my face. My phone vibrated. A notification from my stock app. Huachan Technology hit the limit up today, closing at 14.25 yuan. I hailed a taxi to the brokerage firm. In the rearview mirror, Zhou Hao stood at the hotel entrance, staring darkly in my direction. I rolled up the window, a cold smirk playing on my lips. The game had only just begun, and this time I knew all the cards. The June sunlight pierced through the gap in the curtains. I squinted at my phone, 7:18 a.m. On the nightstand sat the carefully chosen diamond ring. Tonight was supposed to be the night I proposed to Gu Jiaojiao. I took a cold shower, water trickling down my spine. In the mirror, my eyes were rimmed with dark circles. I'd stayed up with Zhao Feng until 3 in the morning last night, just to ensure today's plan was absolutely foolproof. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Zhao Feng, device planted. Any text she sends today will automatically forward to your burner phone. I replied with an okay, dried myself off, and changed into the light blue shirt Gu Jiaojiao liked best. On the wardrobe mirror, a sticky note she had written still lingered. Meeting the parents tonight. Don't be late. Red heart. Expressionless, I tore it down, crumpled it into a ball, and tossed it into the trash can. The Gu family villa was festively adorned. White tents were erected in the yard, long tables laden with exquisite pastries. Mrs. Gu, bedecked in gold and silver, greeted guests at the entrance. Seeing me arrive alone, her brow instantly furrowed. "Where's Jiaojiao?" she asked. She said she was getting her hair done. She'll be here later. I smiled, handing her a gift box. "Andy, this is that silk scarf you mentioned liking last time." Mrs. Gu's expression immediately shifted from cloudy to sunny. As she took the box, her fingers brushed ambiguously against my palm. How had I never noticed these little actions in my past life? This entire family, inside and out, reeked of hypocrisy. Over a dozen relatives, all from the Gu side, were already seated in the living room. I greeted each one, playing the part of the perfect prospective son-in-law. Mr. Gu pulled me along to toast the various uncles, and the conversation quickly turned to my investments. "Little Shi, I heard you made quite a bit on the stock market recently." The eldest uncle slapped my shoulder, his alcohol-laden breath hitting my face. "Just lucky," I replied with a modest smile, catching Mr. Gu prick up his ears out of the corner of my eye. "Young man, don't be too greedy." The second grand uncle stroked his beard. "No one to quit while you're ahead. Investing in solid businesses is the proper way." I nodded in agreement and slipped away, using the excuse of needing the restroom. The room at the end of the second-floor hallway was Gu Jiaojiao's boudoir. The door was slightly ajar. I gently pushed it open. Her spare phone lay on the vanity. My heart pounded as I quickly picked it up. The screen lit up, requiring a passcode. I entered her birthday. Incorrect. Then I tried Jiaojiao's birthday. Success, it unlocked. A sharp pain twisted in my stomach. Although I had braced myself, seeing the proof firsthand still made my breath catch in my throat. I went straight to the text messages. The latest one, sent to Jiaojiao 20 minutes ago, read, "So annoying, have to play along with him again. Miss you, thinking about that day at the hotel." The sound of the doorknob turning made my entire body stiffen. I rapidly took screenshots, placed the phone back where it was, and slipped into the wardrobe. Gu Jiaojiao entered, humming, carrying the scent of a hair salon. She pulled a dress from the wardrobe, her face less than 20 centimeters from mine. Through the crack, I saw her pick up her phone, a sweet smile gracing her lips. Only after she had changed and gone downstairs did I emerge from the wardrobe, my back drenched in sweat. I took a deep breath, composed my expression, and followed her downstairs. As the banquet was in full swing, I accidentally spilled red wine on my shirt. "I'm going up to change," I told Gu Jiaojiao. She was busy chatting with her cousin and gave me a perfunctory nod. Back on the second floor, I slipped into her room once more. This time I got straight to the point. From the inner pocket of my suit jacket, I took out the other phone I had prepared, identical in model and color to Gu Jiaojiao's. The swap took less than 3 seconds. Just as I reached the landing, I heard Gu Jiaojiao's voice call out, "Qi Xuyang, are you done?" "Almost," I replied, deliberately tugging my tie. "Ask you, can you help me with this? No matter how I tie it, this tie looks awkward." She rolled her eyes but still came over to adjust it. As her fingers brushed against my neck, I fought the urge to flinch. "There," she patted my chest. "Let's go down. They're about to cut the cake." During the cake cutting, everyone raised their phones to take pictures. This was the moment I had been waiting for. I discreetly pulled out the burner phone and pressed the preset shortcut key. Gu Jiaojiao's phone, resting on the coffee table, suddenly emitted a series of 5 piercing alert tones. All eyes turned towards the sound. The phone screen automatically lit up, displaying 5 MMS messages, all selfies of her and Jiaojiao in a hotel bed. The living room fell instantly silent. Gu Jiaojiao's face drained of all color. She lunged for the phone, fumbling frantically to turn off the screen. But the program Zhao Feng had planted wasn't so easily bypassed. The screen grew brighter, larger, until the final photo filled it entirely. Jiaojiao, bare-chested, lying in bed, with Gu Jiaojiao nestled against his chest, flashing a peace sign. This isn't real." Gu Jiaojiao shrieked, her voice sharp. "Someone photoshopped these to frame me." I stood rooted to the spot, my face a perfect mask of shock and pain. "Mister." Gu snatched the phone, scrolled through the pictures, veins bulging on his forehead. "Qi Xuyang, what is the meaning of this?" he demanded harshly, as if I were the one caught cheating. I gave a bitter laugh. "I'd like to know that myself." Turning to Gu Jiaojiao, my voice trembling, "Jiaojiao, isn't Jiaojiao your high school classmate? When did you two?" Gu Jiaojiao suddenly exploded. "You investigated me?" She grabbed a vase from the coffee table and smashed it on the floor, porcelain shards flying everywhere. "Who gave you the right to go through my phone?" Her reaction was exquisite. I sneered inwardly, but outwardly appeared even more devastated. "Get out! Get the hell out!" she screamed hysterically, her makeup streaked across her face. "The wedding's off. Don't ever let me see you again." "Mrs." Gu attempted to smooth things over, but Mr. Gu, having seen all the photos, remained silent, his face ashen. I lowered my head, my shoulders slumped, appearing like a complete and utter failure. "I'm sorry for the disturbance," I murmured softly, turning towards the door. Behind me, I heard Gu Jiaojiao's weeping and the hushed whispers of the relatives. Stepping out of the Gu family villa, the night breeze brushed against my face. I let out a long, deep breath. Step 1 of the plan, perfectly executed. The next day at noon, I was in my apartment checking stock prices when the doorbell rang. The security monitor showed Zhao Feng. I buzzed him in. "Holy shit, you're famous," he exclaimed the moment he stepped inside, pulling out a tablet to show me. "The local forums are blowing up with gossip about you." I glanced at it. The headlines were more sensational than the last. Finance was kid-cuckolded, Fiancé's affair with real estate tycoon exposed. Engagement party turns into adultery bust. High society drama escalates. What's Zhou Hao's reaction? I asked. Zhao Feng grinned. That bastard's trying to delete the posts. But the more he deletes, the faster they spread. Latest news, his company stock dropped 3 points in early trading this morning. I nodded, unsurprised. Zhou Hao was a director of a publicly listed company. This kind of scandal often impacted the stock price more significantly than actual business performance. My phone rang. An unknown number. I answered. The caller identified himself as a reporter from the Financial Daily, wanting an interview about the canceled engagement. There's nothing to say, I said, my voice deliberately hoarse. Please respect my privacy. I had just hung up when another call came in, this time from the Metro Evening News. Throughout the morning, I fielded over a dozen calls from the media, maintaining a remarkably consistent performance. Restrained, pained, refusing to comment. At 3 in the afternoon, Zhao Feng suddenly jumped up from his computer. Quick, look at Weibo. Gu Jiaojiao had actually given an interview, claiming the photos were photoshopped, alleging that I had suffered a mental breakdown due to investment failures and had deliberately framed her. Even more incredibly, she claimed I had misappropriated funds intended for a marital home to speculate on stocks, had run up high-interest debts, and even attached a blurry image of a transfer record. This woman really has some nerve, daring to make things up like that. Zhao Feng clicked his tongue. I gave a cold laugh, opened the safe, and retrieved a stack of documents. It's time. An hour later, at a downtown cafe, 5 reporters sat across from me, including Suya from Financial Weekly, the only journalist who had spoken up for me in my past life. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, pushing up my glasses, my voice calm. I've asked you here today to clarify some facts. Firstly, regarding the authenticity of the photos. I presented the evidence I had prepared, piece by piece. An expert agency's authentication report confirming the photos were unaltered. Hotel booking record for Gu Jiaojiao and Zhou Hao spanning the last 6 months. And the most damning piece, an audio recording from the previous night at the Gu residence, capturing her own admission of her relationship with Zhou Hao. The reporters scribbled furiously, camera flashes popping incessantly. Suya, however, kept her gaze fixed on my face, her eyes filled with inquiry. Mr. Chi, she suddenly asked, this evidence is remarkably thorough. It's almost as if you anticipated this outcome. My heart tightened, but I maintained an impassive expression. When a person discovers they've been betrayed, isn't the first instinct to seek the truth? She nodded thoughtfully and didn't press the matter further. After the press conference concluded, Suya discreetly slipped me her business card. If you need to clarify anything further, feel free to contact me anytime. Watching her retreating figure, I recalled how in my past life, she had acid thrown at her for reporting on Zhou Hao's illicit activities. In this life, I would never allow such a thing to happen again. 3 days later, public opinion had completely reversed. Gu Jiaojiao and Zhou Hao became social outcasts, figures scorned by everyone, while I was portrayed as the strong, restrained victim. Even better, the investment portfolio I had inadvertently revealed, particularly the staggering performance of Huachang Technology, catapulted my reputation within financial circles. My office phone rang incessantly with calls seeking collaboration. I leaned back in my leather chair, gazing at the city skyline outside my window, sipping a single malt whiskey. Zhao Feng pushed the door open, his expression somewhat troubled. Found something. You might not want to see this. He handed me a folder. Inside were photographs of Zhou Hao with several heavily tattooed men. The background, clearly an underground casino. One photo, circled prominently in red ink, showed Zhou Hao handing a thick envelope to one of the men. What's this? I pointed at the envelope. Hush money, according to our informant. Zhao Feng lowered his voice. Last year, a migrant worker died at the West City construction site. The family suddenly dropped their lawsuit and settled privately. A throbbing started in my temples. What was the dead man's name? Zhang Jianjun, in his 40s, an out-of-town laborer. Zhao Feng flipped through the documents. The strange thing is 3 days after the accident, 2 million yuan suddenly appeared in his daughter's bank account. The hand holding my glass trembled slightly. In my past life, Old Sheen had told me that my father's last known whereabouts were near that very construction site in West City. Keep digging. I want every piece of information on this Zhang Jianjun. My voice was as cold as ice. And put someone on Zhou Hao, especially his interactions with the Azure Dragon Gang. Zhao Feng nodded and left. I walked to the window. The setting sun stained the clouds a bloody red. In the reflection on the glass, my own eyes looked startlingly unfamiliar, almost unrecognizable even to myself. Revenge had only just begun, and the prey had already stepped into the first trap. Rainwater beat against the glass curtain wall. I stood in my new office on the 28th floor, overlooking the city's blurred silhouette in the downpour. 3 months ago, this place was empty. Now, $1 million smart office system hummed, and over 20 employees bustled about at open-plan workstations. CEO Qi. Here is today's investment briefing. My assistant, Xiao Zhang, gently placed a folder down. Also, Mr. Chen has arrived. He's waiting for you in the conference room. I nodded, picking up the folder and flipping through it. The numbers were impressive. The assets under the company's management had already exceeded $500 million, with an astonishing annualized return rate of 78%. In my past life, it took me 5 years to reach this scale. In the conference room, a tall, thin young man was staring blankly out the window. Chun Ziyuan, the tech genius who should have become my partner in my past life, but was ultimately poached by Zhou Hao due to Gu Jiaojiao's meddling. Now, he wore a washed-out shirt, dark circles shadowed his eyes, and steam rose from the disposable paper cup before him. Mr. Chun, sorry to keep you waiting. I pushed the door open. He scrambled to his feet, knocking his knee against the table, splashing coffee onto the documents. Sorry, It's all right. I handed him a tissue and sat down opposite him. Zhao Feng told me about your AI algorithm. I'm very interested. Chun Ziyuan's eyes lit up, his fingers unconsciously gesturing. It's not just ordinary machine learning, but a completely new neural network architecture. It can predict market sentiment fluctuations with an accuracy of 87.3%. At least that's what it said in that rejected paper of yours from last year. I interjected. His eyes widened. You've read my paper? Not only read it, I believe it's worth this much. I wrote a number on a notepad and pushed it towards him. Chun Yuan stared at the paper, his Adam's apple bobbing. This is enough to build a complete research team. Not just that. I stood up. Let me show you something. I led him down the corridor to a glass door labeled R&D department. Swiping the card to enter, we stepped into a 200-square-meter high-tech laboratory. 6 top-tier servers blinked with blue light, and screens on the wall displayed real-time global financial market data. This is... Chun Ziyuan's voice caught in his throat. Your new office. I handed him an access card. The budget is unlimited, but I need to see a runnable initial version within 3 months. His hand was shaking. He nearly dropped the card as he took it. Why me? There are so many famous teams. Because they are all just repeating others' paths. I looked him straight in the eye. But you, Chun Ziyuan, you are creating the future. That hit the mark. Chun Ziyuan's eyes reddened, and he nodded firmly. I knew, from this moment on, he would become my most loyal partner. Returning to the office, Xiao Zhang hurried over. CEO Qi, we just received news. The bidding for the city government's tech park project tomorrow has been moved forward. A faint smile played on my lips. In my past life, this future tech city project was delayed for 2 years before construction started, eventually becoming an unfinished mess that bankrupted 3 contractors. And now, I knew exactly who would be interested. Get the car ready. I'm going somewhere. I picked up my suit jacket. The coffee shop at the Peninsula Hotel was quiet as always. I chose a seat by the window, deliberately facing away from the entrance. 10 minutes later, the familiar click of high heels approached from a distance. What a coincidence, Qi Shuyang. Gu Jiaojiao's voice, deliberately saccharine, came from behind me. I turned slowly, feigning surprise. She wore a new Chanel suit, carried an Hermes bag. Her makeup as perfect as a magazine cover. But the fine lines at the corners of her eyes and her slightly puffy cheeks betrayed her true state. Zhou Hao's company stock had been falling for 2 consecutive weeks. Not a coincidence. I closed my folder. I was waiting for you. Gu Jiaojiao's smile froze. What do you mean? I gestured for her to sit down and pushed a menu towards her. I heard you and Jiaojiao started an investment company. You've registered for that tech park project in the West District too, haven't you? Her fingers tightened on the menu, leaving creases. That's confidential business information, no comment. I just want to help you. I lowered my voice. There's a problem with this project. Inside information from the Land Bureau. There's a pollution remediation controversy surrounding that plot. The permits will never be issued. Gu Jiaojiao narrowed her eyes. Why are you telling us this? Old feelings die hard. I laughed self-deprecatingly, then said seriously, actually, I want to cooperate. I provide the tech, you provide the capital. Profit split 30/70ths. We get 70? Of course. I took a sip of coffee. After all, you're taking on a main risk. She stared at me for a full 10 seconds, then suddenly laughed. Qi Shuyang, your acting skills have regressed. We investigated thoroughly. There are absolutely no issues with that land. The permits are coming through next week. She stood up, looking down at me. And let me tell you, not only will we win this project, but we'll operate it in a way you can't even imagine. Just wait and see. I watched her sway her hips as she left, the corner of my mouth lifting unconsciously. The fish took the bait. On the day of the bidding, I deliberately arrived 10 minutes late. As I walked into City Hall, Gu Jiaojiao and Jiaojiao were already seated in the front row, chatting warmly with several officials. When Jiaojiao saw me, he gave me a provocative smile. I chose a seat in the back corner and opened my laptop. On the stage, the host began introducing the project plan. When the PowerPoint slide switched to the return on investment analysis, I accidentally knocked my pen off the table. In the moment I bent down to pick it up, my fingers rapidly typed a few keys. Up front, Jiaojiao's phone screen lit up. He glanced at it, then immediately leaned over and whispered in Gu Jiaojiao's ear. They exchanged a meaningful look. I knew what they had received. An anonymous email containing what appeared to be my actual business plan, showing the Tech Park project's real ROI was as high as 300%. The plan was meticulously crafted. Only a few key figures had been cleverly modified, imperceptible to anyone but seasoned industry professionals. The bidding process began. When the host announced the starting bid of $500 million, Jiaojiao was the first to raise his paddle. $550 million. I looked up, feigning surprise, and quickly looked down at my files when our eyes met, appearing flustered. This action didn't escape Gu Jiaojiao's notice. $600 million, another developer called out. Jiaojiao, without hesitation. $650 million. A stir went through the hall. This price was already approaching the upper limit of the market valuation. Biting my lip, I hesitantly raised my paddle. $660 million. $700 million. Jiaojiao jumped to his feet and shouted the bid, looking at me provocatively. I lowered my paddle in dismay and shook my head. The auctioneer's hammer fell, and the hall erupted in applause. Jiaojiao and Gu Jiaojiao embraced in celebration, while I quietly closed my laptop and left the hall through a side door. Just as I settled into the car, my phone rang. It was old Sheen. Little Shi, I heard you attended the Tech Park bidding today. The old man's voice was hearty. Yes, old Sheen, but I didn't win the bid. A booming laugh came from the other end. A blessing in disguise. I was just playing ball with Old Lee from the Land Bureau. He mentioned the permits for that project really do have issues. It will be delayed for at least another year. Really? That's truly regrettable. I struggled to keep the laughter out of my voice. By the way, regarding those Zisha teapots you mentioned last time, I found an appraisal expert. Excellent. Bring him over to my place for tea this weekend. It's a good chance to introduce you to some friends. Hanging up, I let out a long sigh of relief. In the rearview mirror, Jiaojiao and Gu Jiaojiao were surrounded by reporters, giving interviews, their faces beaming with victorious joy. They had no idea that their $700 million in capital was about to be tied up in a project that would never break ground. And this was just the beginning. The lights in Chen Ziyuan's lab were burning bright. When I pushed the door open, he and 3 assistants were gathered around a monitor, discussing something excitedly. CEO Qi. He waved me over upon seeing me. Quick, look at the initial test results. On the screen was a 3D city model. Countless points of light flowed within it. Chen Ziyuan typed a few keys, and the model switched to a stock market trend chart, where a red line accurately predicted the fluctuations for the next 3 days. The accuracy rate has increased to 89.7%, he said excitedly. And we discovered the algorithm can also identify abnormal trading patterns. Basically, it can predict any manipulated market behavior. I felt a jolt. In my past life, Zhou had used a series of complex market manipulations to eventually seize my company. With this weapon, can it trace the manipulators? I asked. Shen Ziyuan pushed up his glasses. Theoretically, yes. With enough data, we can pinpoint the specific accounts. I patted his shoulder. Keep refining it. Also, I need a special function, predicting and stress testing the stock price of a specific company. Which company? I took a slip of paper from my wallet. Shen Ziyuan glanced at it, his eyebrows shooting up. Zhou Group Real Estate. Is there a problem? No, it's just. He hesitated, wanted to say more, but stopping himself. They've been taking on massive debt to acquire projects recently. Their financial leverage is already very high. What happens if the stock price suddenly drops by more than 20%? Margin call. The banks will force the liquidation of all pledged stocks. Shen Ziyuan made a collapsing gesture with his hands. Overnight, the company could change hands. I nodded with a smile. Then it's settled. How long will it take to develop the function? 2 weeks. He hesitated for a moment. CEO Qi, do you have some history with the Zhou Group? Outside, a bolt of lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating half of it. Amidst the booming thunder, I replied softly, it's merely a business precaution. Leaving the lab, the rain was falling harder. I stood under the eaves, watching the rainwater form streams on the ground, flowing towards the low-lying areas. Just like capital in the business world, always flowing towards the weakest links. And Zhou Hao and Gu Jiaojiao were personally digging their own company into the deepest pit. The air conditioning in the coffee shop was turned up too high. I rubbed my arms and looked toward the door. There were still 5 minutes until the appointed time, but I knew she would arrive early. That was Suya's habit in my past life. Sure enough, the glass door swung open, and a woman with her hair in a ponytail, wearing a simple white shirt, walked in. She scanned the room, her gaze sharp, finally locking onto me in the corner. Mr. Qi. She walked up to the table, but didn't offer her hand. I'm Suya from Finance Weekly. I nodded. Please sit. What would you like to drink? An Americano, no sugar. She placed her recorder and notebook on the table, her movements clean and efficient. Thank you for agreeing to this interview. As the waiter came to take our order, Suya kept staring at my face, as if trying to see through my skin and into my skull. In my past life, we first met in court. By then, I had lost everything. She was the only reporter willing to listen to me. Ms. Su, your recent report on listed companies' financial fraud was brilliant, I said, stirring my coffee. Especially the part about Zhou Real Estate. Her eyelashes fluttered slightly. That was just the first piece in a series. You know a lot about Zhou Real Estate? Just industry peers. I shrugged. But I hear they recently took on a big project at the tech park, and their cash flow is stretched thin. Suya suddenly closed her notebook. Mr. Qi, let's get straight to the point. Your company was founded 6 months ago, and its investment return rate has consistently ranked first in the industry, without a single mistake. She leaned forward. That defies probability. I met her gaze. Good luck. No one's luck is that good, she lowered her voice, unless you have inside information. Outside, the sunlight was suddenly blocked by clouds, and the coffee shop dimmed. I slowly put down my cup, the ceramic clinking softly against the glass tabletop. What if I told you I could predict the future? I said, half joking. So you rolled her eyes. Then I'd suggest you switch careers to fortune-telling. I smiled, took an envelope from my briefcase, and pushed it towards her. Take a look at this. She warily opened the envelope. Inside were several bank statements and photos. When she saw a photo of Zhou Hao with a bald man, she drew a sharp breath. Scarface Chong? The boss of the Azure Dragon Gang. The photo was taken last week at the Imperial Dynasty nightclub on the west side, I said softly. Zhou Real Estate recently took out 3 loans totaling $200 million, guaranteed by a small loan company called Jinyun. Suya reacted quickly. A money laundering front for the Azure Dragon Gang? Clever. I nodded in approval. What's more, all that money went into the Tech Park project. And according to inside information from the Land Bureau, the permits aren't coming through. She finished my sentence, her eyes sparkling. This is huge news. The waiter came over to refill our cups, and we both fell silent. Once the waiter was gone, Suya suddenly narrowed her eyes. Why give this to me? Fair competition is important. I looked directly into her eyes. I don't like people using underworld connections to disrupt market order. She stared at me for a long moment, seemingly judging my sincerity. Finally, she put away the envelope. I'll investigate. If it's true, you'll write a story that shakes the nation. I finished for her. I only ask one thing. Be careful. Neither Zhou Hao nor the Azure Dragon Gang are people you want to mess with. Suya chuckled softly. Threats are a reporter's badge of honor. She stood up and suddenly asked, Mr. Qi, do you have a history with Zhou Hao? Sunlight broke through the clouds again, illuminating her profile. For a moment, I saw a vision of my past life. The female reporter who had spoken out for me in court, who was later disfigured by an acid attack but still persisted with her investigation. The one with the grudge isn't me, I said softly. It's justice. She raised an eyebrow, clearly not buying such a high-sounding excuse, but still handed me a business card. Contact me anytime if you have more leads. I watched her back disappear through the door, then took out my phone and dialed Zhao Feng's number. The fish took the bait. Begin Phase 2. 3 days later, I met Suyo again in the coffee shop downstairs from my company. This time, she had dark circles under her eyes, clearly having pulled an all-nighter, but she was buzzing with energy. I found more, she whispered, pulling a stack of documents from her bag. Over the past 5 years, Zhou Real Estate has settled 12 labor disputes privately, 3 of which involved serious worker injuries. The most suspicious case was an accident last June. A migrant worker named Zhang Jianjun fell from the scaffolding and died instantly. My heart suddenly raced. Zhang Jianjun. Yes. The family initially insisted on suing, but then abruptly dropped the lawsuit and disappeared. So you produced a blurry photograph. This is the only photo leaked from the accident scene. Look closely at this corner. The photo showed a chaotic construction site, paramedics surrounding a body covered with a white sheet. At the very edge of the frame, a blurry figure was turning away, something reflective glinting on their wrist. My fingers trembled involuntarily. In my past life, Old Qin had given me an identical photo, saying it might be the last image of my father. Mr. Qi, are you all right? Suya looked at me quizzically. I'm fine. I forced myself to remain calm. This Zhang Jianjun, is there any other information on him? Very little. He came from out of town to work, supposedly to pay for his daughter's tuition. Suya sighed. The strangest thing is 3 days after the incident, his daughter's bank account suddenly received a 2 million remittance from an offshore company. I gripped my coffee cup tightly, the heat searing my palm through the ceramic. In my past life, I couldn't uncover the cause of my father's death. In this life, the clue had returned to me in this way. Ms. Sue, don't publish this report yet, I said seriously. I need your help investigating the connection between Zhang Jianjun and that offshore company. Why? She asked sharply. What does this have to do with you? I was weighing my response when my phone suddenly rang. It was Chen Ziyuan. Boss Qi, the system had a major breakthrough. You'd better come over right away. Hanging up, I apologized to Suya. Something urgent came up. We'll talk about this another time. Please be careful. She frowned, displeased, but nodded anyway. I'll keep investigating. But Mr. Qi, don't expect me to wait forever for your explanation. In the lab, Chen Ziyuan and his team were cheering around the large screen. Seeing me enter, he waved excitedly. Boss Qi, look. The screen displayed Zhou Real Estate's stock price chart next to a complex algorithmic model. We did it. The system can not only predict market manipulation, but also trace the manipulator's back. He tapped a few keys, and the image switched to a network diagram. The central node was clearly Zhou Hao's photo, with dozens of lines radiating outwards, connecting to various companies and individuals. I approached the screen, the real control network behind Zhou Real Estate. Chen Ziyuan pushed up his glasses. By analyzing all anomalous transactions over the past 6 months, we found at least 8 accounts coordinating to manipulate Zhou's stock price. And all these accounts ultimately point to the same funding source. He zoomed in on one node, a company called Jin Yun Credit. The Azure Dragon Gang, I sneered. Not only that, Chen Ziyuan continued operating the system. It also detected a pattern. Right before Zhou Real Estate announces positive news, these accounts make large purchases in advance. This isn't just ordinary insider trading. It's organized, planned stock price manipulation. I stared at the flickering data stream on the screen, my heart pounding. In my past life, Zhou used these exact methods to take my company from me step by step. Now, I finally had him by the throat. Can we run a stress test? I asked. What happens if Zhou's stock price suddenly drops by 20%? Chen Ziyuan input some parameters, and the model began to run. A few seconds later, a red warning popped up on the screen. Collateral value insufficient. Margin call triggered. That's it. I murmured. Save all the evidence. Prepare. Suddenly, a piercing alarm blared, and the lab lights turned a harsh red. What's happening? Chen Ziyuan asked in panic. The head of security's voice came over the intercom. Boss Chi, suspicious individuals breached the underground parking garage. We've subdued one, but there might be accomplices. Please remain in the secure area for now. My heart tightened. Bring up the surveillance feed. The main screen switched to a live feed from the parking garage. Two men in black were pinned to the ground by security personnel, steel pipes and camera equipment scattered nearby. Reporters? Chen Ziyuan asked, puzzled. I zoomed in on the image and saw the Azure Dragon tattoo on one man's arm. No, they're from the Azure Dragon gang. Just then, my phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. Asterisk, stay out of it. Unless you want to end up like your father. Asterisk, my blood ran cold. They know about my father. That night, I stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of my apartment, gazing down at the city lights. My phone lay on the table, speakerphone on. Zhao Feng's voice came through. Found them. The ones tailing you are definitely Scarface Chong's men. Worse, they're watching reporter Suya too. I hacked into the phone of one of the gang's grunts. It had her address and daily schedule. I tightened my grip on my whiskey glass, the ice cubes clinking. Assign people to protect her. Don't alert them. Understood. Also, regarding Zhang Jianjun's accident, I found a detail. Zhao Feng's voice turned serious. On the day it happened, the construction site surveillance system was conveniently under maintenance. But a nearby convenience store camera caught a black Mercedes entering and leaving. The license plate was obscured. Model, an S600, an older model. Zhao Feng paused. Qi Shuyong, the day your father disappeared. He was driving the same model. I finished his sentence, a heavy weight pressing on my chest. Keep digging. I want concrete proof. After hanging up, I opened my safe and took out an old envelope. Inside was a list of the items my father had with him when he disappeared. Wallet, keys, phone, and that heirloom Patek Philippe watch. The crack on the watch face. The blurry reflection in the photo. The images began to merge in my mind. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. I glanced warily at the security monitor. Suya stood outside, her face pale. I opened the door, and she rushed inside. Someone's following me. Just now, downstairs. Before she could finish, her gaze fell on the photo on the coffee table. The picture from Zhang Jianjun's accident scene. She snapped her head up, shock flashing in her eyes. You knew Zhang Jianjun? I hesitated for a moment, then decided on a partial confession. He might be connected to my father's disappearance. Suya's expression shifted from shock to dawning realization. So that's the real reason you're targeting Zhou Hao. Not to market justice, but personal revenge. Outside, a flash of lightning illuminated the disappointment on her face. Amidst the booming thunder, I didn't know how to respond. The rain began to fall, drumming against the glass like countless tiny accusations. Suya stood there, damp strands of hair clinging to her cheeks, waiting for my explanation. And I, for the first time in this reborn life, felt the inadequacy of words. The red light on the finance channel's camera lit up. The host, wearing a professional smile, asked, Mr. Chi, the stock market has been hitting new highs recently, yet you've publicly warned of risks. Isn't that a bit alarmist? I adjusted my tie and looked directly into the camera. It's not alarmist. It's a fundamental judgment. The Fed's interest rate hike is imminent. Domestic liquidity is already showing signs of marginal tightening, and the market bubble is obvious. But Mr. Zhou Hao of Zhou Enterprises stated in an interview yesterday that your concerns are unfounded worries from an outsider, and he declared he would continue to increase his positions. The host handed over a newspaper. The front page featured a photo of Zhou Hao with his arm around Gu Jiaojiao at a charity gala. Headline, "The Golden Decade Has Just Begun." I chuckled softly. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. I am simply reminding investors to be mindful of the risks, especially concerning companies with excessive leverage. Stepping out of the television station building, the June heat wave hit me. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Chun Ziyuan, model confirmed. Market will undergo drastic correction within 72 hours. Probability, 92.3%. I replied with received and looked up at the huge electronic screen on Financial Street. Optimistic forecasts from various institutions scrolled across it, and Zhou Enterprises' stock price was still hitting new highs. At this exact time in my previous life, like all blindly optimistic investors, I had bet my entire fortune on the so-called golden decade, only to lose everything. But now, I knew that in 3 days, the Fed would unexpectedly announce its plan to shrink its balance sheet, triggering a global market earthquake. "Mr. Chi, the car is ready." The driver, Xiao Lu, opened the car door. "To the office first." I slipped into the back seat, pulled out my laptop, and began issuing a series of instructions. Close all long positions by put options, increase cash reserves to 80%. While the car was stopped at a red light, I casually glanced out the window. An outdoor table of the cafe across the street. Suyu was talking with a middle-aged man. The man had his back to me, but the gray suit and the slightly balding back of his head made me tense up. Director Li from the Land Bureau, the official in charge of approving the Tech Park project. I immediately dialed Zhao Feng's number. Check Director Li's recent call records, especially any contact with Zhou Enterprises. "What a coincidence. I was just about to call you." Zhao Feng's voice was unusually tense. "The Green Dragon Gang is making a move. Scarface Chong gathered some core members last night. Mentioned your name and kidnapping." My fingers tapped on my knee. "Expected. Proceed according to the contingency plan." Hanging up, I glanced in the rearview mirror. A black motorcycle was following at a distance, the rider wearing a full-face helmet, obscuring their face. In the company conference room, the investment team was engaged in a heated debate. When I pushed the door open, the arguments abruptly stopped. "Continue." I walked to the head seat and sat down. Old Chun, the risk control director, pushed up his glasses. "Mr. Chi, we've run the calculations. If we switch completely to a defensive strategy, as you suggest, and the market continues to rise, the pressure from client redemptions will be immense. I'll handle the clients." I turned on the projector. "Now, everyone look at this." The screen displayed the warning model developed by Chun Ziyuan's team. Streams of dense data converged into a striking red warning signal. According to our AI systems analysis, the probability of a market correction exceeds 90%. I looked around at everyone. This isn't speculation. It's a calculation based on millions of data points. Starting tomorrow, all products will execute Plan B. After the meeting dismissed, only my assistant, Xiao Zhang, remained. "Mr. Chi, old Qin called. He invited you to his home for tea tonight." I nodded, but a sliver of caution rose within me. In my previous life, it was at such a tea gathering that old Qin had revealed crucial information, helping me survive the crisis. But the timing now was too coincidental, so much so that it felt deliberately arranged. "Reply that I'll be there on time." I paused. "Also, don't tell anyone about my itinerary tonight, including anyone within the company." Xiao Zhang gave me a puzzled look, but nodded in agreement. At dusk, I stood in the company's underground parking garage, but didn't walk towards my usual Mercedes. Turning into a corner, I slipped into an inconspicuous Honda sedan. Zhao Feng was in the driver's seat. He handed me an earpiece and a tracker. "Is everything arranged?" I checked the equipment. "Yes, the security team is following in 3 groups, and the police have been notified." Zhao Feng started the car. "Still, I think it's too risky. You can't catch a wolf cub without entering the den." I rolled down the window, letting the night breeze dry the sweat on my forehead. Zhou Hao is desperate now. This is the best chance to get leverage on him. The car drove into the night. I glanced at the rearview mirror. The familiar black motorcycle had reappeared, following at a distance. "The fish has taken the bait," Zhao Feng said softly. As planned, we suddenly accelerated on a deserted side road, and turned into an abandoned factory area. The motorcycle followed closely, and now 2 vans appear behind it. Now, I pressed the button on my earpiece. Zhao Feng slammed on the brakes. I feigned panic, jumped out of the car, and ran. I had only run about 10 meters before 3 burly men tackled me to the ground. Someone pulled a hood over my head and roughly shoved me into a vehicle. "Behave!" a hoarse voice threatened. Cold metal pressed against my waist. A gun? The vehicle jolted along for about half an hour before stopping. I was dragged out and pulled into a space thick with the smell of mildew. The hood was ripped off. Blinding white light made it impossible to open my eyes. It was an abandoned warehouse. I was tied to a metal chair. Standing before me was Scarface Chong, his bald head gleaming under the light, a hideous scar running down his left cheek from the corner of his eye to his mouth. Beside him stood a tall, thin man wearing gold-rimmed glasses, fiddling with a laptop. "Mr. Chi, heard so much about you." Scarface Chong grinned, revealing several gold teeth. "Know why we invited you here?" I pretended to struggle. "This is kidnapping. How much did Zhou Hao pay you?" Scarface Chong's expression changed. "Smart guy." He leaned in, the stench of alcohol hitting me. "Since you're so smart, why don't you hand over that stock market prediction algorithm?" "What algorithm?" I feigned confusion. Still pretending, Scarface Chong punched me in the stomach. Excruciating pain doubled me over. "Boss Zhou said you have an AI that can predict the stock market. I want that." Gasping for breath, I looked up, a faint smile playing on my lips. "Didn't Zhou Hao tell you? That AI has a self-destruct feature. If I don't return on time, all the data automatically uploads to the police servers." Scarface Chong's face changed drastically. He looked at the man with gold-rimmed glasses. The latter pushed up his glasses. "It's possible. Systems of this level usually have protective mechanisms." "Then let him operate it himself." Scarface Chong waved impatiently. "You have 10 minutes. Copy the algorithm onto this computer, or else." He pulled a dagger from his belt and tapped it lightly against my cheek. I nodded, pretending to be scared. The man with glasses untied my right hand and pushed the laptop towards me. I flexed my fingers and typed a line of code. "It needs my encrypted USB drive," I said. "It's in the inner pocket of my suit jacket." Suspiciously, Scarface Chong searched me, found a USB drive, and handed it over. I inserted it into the computer and pretended to work, but actually activated the tracking program hidden inside. Complex code began scrolling across the screen. The man with glasses watched, his eyes gleaming. "So intricate," he murmured. Just then, several muffled thuds sounded from outside the warehouse, followed by chaotic footsteps. Scarface Chong spun around alertly. "What's that noise?" Before he finished speaking, the warehouse doors burst open and heavily armed SWAT officers rushed in. "Police! Don't move!" Scarface Chong roared and pulled out his pistol, but before he could fire, he was hit by a taser and collapsed, convulsing. The man with glasses tried to run, but was tackled and pinned down by 2 officers. Zhao Feng walked in with a police officer and untied me. "Are you okay?" I rubbed my wrists, smoother than expected. Then I pointed to the surveillance camera in the corner. "Did that capture everything?" "Live streamed the whole thing." Zhao Feng grinned, including the part where Zhou Hao called 5 minutes ago to give instructions. "The police have already gone to invite him to assist with their investigation." I took out my phone and dialed a number. "Reporter Sue, interested in covering a case about a listed company's boss colluding with organized crime to kidnap a competitor." The next day, the entire financial circle was in an uproar. Photos of Zhou Hao being taken away by the police for investigation dominated the headlines of major media outlets. Zhou Enterprises' stock price hit the lower limit right at the market open. Simultaneously, news broke that the Fed had unexpectedly announced plans to shrink its balance sheet, causing global markets to plummet. I stood in the company's trading hall, watching the sea of red on the large screens. Only our products, thanks to preemptive risk aversion, were not only unscathed, but had also profited handsomely from short selling. "Mr. Chi, Zhou Enterprises has fallen below the margin call level," a trader shouted excitedly. "The banks are initiating forced liquidation. Initiate the harvest plan." Within 3 hours, through a series of complex maneuvers, We quietly acquired 15% of Zhou Enterprises' circulating shares, becoming the second largest shareholder. Just as I was about to leave, Xiao Zhang hurried over. Mr. Chi, Miss Gu is at the front desk. She says she needs to see you. I raised an eyebrow. Let her in. When Gu Jiaojiao burst into the office, I almost didn't recognize her. Her makeup was smeared, her eyes were red and swollen, her expensive suit was wrinkled, and she clutched a file folder. Qi Xiang, I'm begging you, let Zhou go. She dropped straight to her knees, her voice hoarse. He knows he was wrong. If you just drop the charges. I motioned for Xiao Zhang to leave and close the door. Miss Gu, kidnapping is a criminal offense. It's not something I can simply withdraw. But he truly didn't know about the organized crime stuff. Gu Jiaojiao grabbed my trouser leg. It was Scarface Chong acting on his own. I sneered and pulled up an audio recording on my computer. Zhou Hao's voice came through clearly. Use whatever means necessary. You must get that AI algorithm. Gu Jiaojiao's face turned deathly pale instantly. And this. I opened a bank statement. Over the past 6 months, Zhou Hao transferred a total of 6 million to Scarface Chong's account, noted as service fees. Still call that unknowing? She collapsed onto the floor, tears smudging her mascara. What will it take for you to let him go? I leaned down and whispered, tell me about Zhang Jianjun. Gu Jiaojiao's head snapped up, fear flashing in her eyes. Who? I don't know him. The migrant worker who died on Zhou Hao's construction site last year. I stared intently into her eyes. His death was related to Zhou Hao, wasn't it? It was just an accident, she screamed uncontrollably. Then, realizing her slip, quickly covered her mouth. I straightened up and took out my phone. Reporter Sue, did you record all that? The side door of the office opened, and Suya walked out, holding a recording pen. Gu Jiaojiao looked as if she had seen a ghost. You set me up, she shrieked and lunged at me, but I easily dodged her. Just like you and Zhou Hao set me up, I said coldly. But I'll give you a chance. Tell me everything you know about Zhang Jianjun and Zhou Hao, and I might consider pleading for leniency for Zhou Hao in court. Gu Jiaojiao's lips trembled, her gaze shifting between Suya and me. Finally, she broke down, her head drooping. I'll talk, but you have to promise not to tell Zhou Hao it was me. An hour later, Gu Jiaojiao stumbled out of the office. Suya turned off the recording pen and looked at me with a complex expression. Qi Xiang, this goes beyond business revenge. Who exactly is Zhang Jianjun to you? Outside the window, the setting sun stained the clouds blood red. Gazing at the distant silhouette of the Zhou Enterprises building, I said softly, he might be the only witness to my father's death. Suya sucked in a sharp breath. I opened the safe and took out the shattered Patek Philippe watch. This is the watch my father was wearing when he disappeared. Before Zhang Jianjun died, he called my mother, saying he knew my father's whereabouts. My voice choked. In my previous life, I couldn't uncover the truth. In this life, I absolutely will not let the murderer remain at large. Suya gently squeezed my hand. I'll help you. But Qi Xiang, after the revenge? How do you plan to live? I froze. Since my rebirth, my mind had been consumed by plans for revenge. I had never thought about what came after. Night deepened, leaving me alone in the office. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the city lights. Ice cubes clinked in my whiskey glass, reflecting countless shattered, distorted images of myself. Revenge was almost complete, but why did I feel so empty inside, as if something was missing? The heavy rain hammered against the office's floor-to-ceiling windows. I stared at the bank transaction records on the computer screen, my eyes sore and aching. This was the data Zhao Feng had just borrowed from the police database. All the financial transactions between Zhou Hao and the Azure Dragon Gang over the past 5 years. One record suddenly caught my eye. December 3rd, 2018, Zhou Hao's personal account transferred $2 million to Scarface Chong. The memo field contained only 3 letters, QZH, my father's initials. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, as if frozen. Outside, a bolt of lightning flashed, illuminating the old watch belonging to my father resting on the corner of the desk. The crack on its glass face mirrored the feeling in my chest. A knock sounded at the door. I quickly switched screens. Come in. Suya pushed the door open, the ends of her hair still dripping water. She clutched a file box, her face alarmingly pale. You should see this. She placed the box on the desk, rainwater bleeding dark stains onto the cardboard. I just borrowed this from the Urban Construction Bureau's archives. I opened the box. Inside was a stack of yellowed papers, the accident investigation report for the West City construction site. On top was Zhang Jianjun's death certificate. The cause of death was listed as craniocerebral injury due to a fall from height, but the attached accident scene photos showed an unnatural indentation on his head, clearly caused by blunt force trauma. The coroner's original notes and the final report don't match. So you pointed to the two documents. The original notes mentioned suspicion of homicide, but that was deleted in the final version. I flipped to the last page. The approval signature line glaringly displayed the name of Director Li from the Land Resources Bureau. The date was 3 days after my father disappeared. And there's something stranger. Suya leaned closer, carrying the damp scent of rain. I checked Zhang Jianjun's daughter's bank records. That $2 million transfer came from an offshore company. The registrant is Director Li's nephew. I finished her sentence. These pieces were never put together in my past life. Suya looked at me, astonished. How did you know? I avoided her gaze. Just a logical deduction. Director Li and Zhou Hao colluded. Zhang Jianjun saw something he shouldn't have, so that Qi Shuyang. Suya interrupted me suddenly, her voice unusually gentle. Revenge won't bring your father back. The whiskey glass trembled violently in my hand, amber liquid spilling onto the documents. I put the glass down and pulled out a tissue to wipe it, only to find my hand shaking uncontrollably. I know, I finally said, my voice hoarser than I expected. But if I don't do this, I don't know how else to live. The sound of the rain filled the silence. Suya's gaze fell on my wrist, where a scar remained from jumping off a building in my past life. Evidence, in this timeline, of a childhood bicycle accident. Do you believe people have past lives? I asked suddenly. Suya raised an eyebrow. As a journalist, I only believe in evidence. She paused. But sometimes around you, I do get a strange sense of familiarity. Another bolt of lightning flashed, momentarily illuminating her profile. I remembered how she looked defending me in court in my past life, back when her right cheek didn't bear the scar from the acid burn. Tell me about Zhang Jianjun's daughter. I changed the subject. Zhang Xiaoyan. She's currently a junior at S University. So you open her notebook. The strange thing is, after receiving that money, she didn't spend it lavishly. Instead, she established a mutual aid society for construction workers' rights, specifically to help the families of deceased workers. My heart jolted. In my past life, when I was down and out, a girl named Zhang Xiaoyan had anonymously wired me some money. The message only contained 4 words: justice never dies. We need to see her, I said. Suya shook her head. I've tried. She's very wary and refuses all interviews, especially about her father. She hesitated. But if you approach her mutual aid society as a potential investor, perhaps. The ringing phone interrupted our conversation. It was Chen Ziyuan. Boss Chi. His voice was high-pitched with excitement. The AI system detected abnormal transactions. Zhou Properties is being heavily shorted. It's not just us. At least 3 other institutions are working together. I immediately pulled up the stock market quotes. Zhou Properties' stock price had already fallen below the margin call line, and trading volume had surged. Is Gu Jiaojiao dumping stock? I asked. No. The strange thing is, she was actually increasing her holdings this morning, Chen Ziyuan said. But the system analysis shows these sell orders are coming from Zhou Hao's private accounts, routed through a dozen shell companies. Suya and I exchanged a look. Zhou Hao is in detention. The only one who could operate his accounts is Gu Jiaojiao is secretly selling off Zhou Hao's shares. Realization dawned on me. Hanging up, I quickly sent instructions to Zhao Feng. Keep a close eye on Gu Jiaojiao. Check all her recent financial movements and travel records. Suya watched me thoughtfully. You're not going to stop her. Why stop her? I sneered. Let her see for herself what it feels like to be betrayed by the person you trust most. The collapse of Zhou Properties happened faster than expected. The next day, it hit the limit down at market open, wiping out nearly $4 billion in market value. The media began running extensive reports on Zhou Hao's alleged gang ties. Banks started calling in loans, and business partners lined up to terminate contracts. And Gu Jiaojiao, just as I predicted, began frantically liquidating assets. Surveillance photos sent by Zhao Feng showed her visiting multiple banks and jewelry stores over 2 consecutive days. Even better, she had booked a one-way ticket to Canada for tomorrow afternoon. Should we call the police? Zhao Feng asked over the phone. Not yet. I stood by the office window, watching the sunset paint the city blood red. Let her taste hope first. A soft knock came at the door. By the time I turned, Suya had already entered. Today, she wore a simple white shirt and jeans, her hair casually tied in a ponytail, much softer than her usual sharp, professional interviewing image. There's progress, she said directly. I found the coroner who handled Zhang Jianjun's case back then. He's retired and lives in the suburbs. I grabbed my jacket. Let's go now. The coroner, Old Chun, lived in an old apartment building on the outskirts of the city. When he opened the door, he eyed us warily. Who are you? Reporters. We'd like to ask about the Zhang Jianjun case. Suya showed her press credentials. Old Chin's expression changed, and he moved to close the door. I quickly blocked the door. We know the truth was covered up. Zhang Jianjun didn't die by accident. Neither did my father, Qi Jinhua. Hearing my father's name, Old Chin's hand suddenly trembled. He glanced around nervously, then lowered his voice. Come in. The small living room was piled high with medical books. Old Chun poured us tea, his hands still unsteady, spilling some on the glass coffee table. 10 years, he murmured. I have the same nightmare every night. So you turned on her recorder. Can you tell us what happened back then? Old Chun took a deep breath. When Zhang Jianjun's body arrived, the skull fracture was clearly caused by blunt force trauma. I noted suspicion of homicide in my report. He wiped sweat from his forehead. But the next day, Director Li came to see me personally. He said it was an important investment project and couldn't be affected. How much do they pay you? I asked bluntly. Old Chun jerked his head up. It wasn't about money. They threatened my grandson. His voice choked. I changed the report, but I kept the original notes, hidden in a specially marked folder in the archives. Why Zhang Jianjun? I pressed. What did he see? Old Chin's gaze drifted into the distance. He said, he saw a group of people push a middle-aged man into a concrete mixer truck. The man was wearing a very expensive watch. My blood ran cold. My father's watch. Zhang Jianjun recognized the man wearing the watch. Old Chin continued. He said it was a businessman featured in the newspapers a few years ago, surnamed Qi. Suya's hand suddenly covered the back of mine. Only then did I realize my nails were digging deeply into my palm. One more thing. Trembling, Old Chun retrieved an envelope from the depths of a bookshelf. This was found in Zhang Jianjun's pocket. No one else knows. I thought, it should go to you. Inside the envelope was a crumpled slip of paper with a string of numbers scrawled crookedly on it. QZH1023. What's this? Suya asked, puzzled. I stared at the numbers, my heart pounding wildly. My father's birthday plus the last 4 digits of his watch's serial number. By the time we left Old Chin's place, it was completely dark. Suya drove in silence. I sat in the passenger seat, staring blankly at the slip of paper. The chain of evidence is complete now. Suya said softly, what are you planning to do? I didn't answer immediately. 10 years. I finally knew what had happened to my father, but the knot of grief in my chest hadn't eased at all. Deal with Gu Jiaojiao first. I finally said, she'll be at the airport tomorrow. We'll intercept her there. My phone suddenly vibrated, cutting me off. It was a text message from Zhang Xiaoyan. So you must have given her my number at some point. Mr. Qi, I'd like to meet you. Regarding my father and yours. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., Workers' Cultural Palace. So you looked at me, puzzled. What is it? I handed her the phone. Her brow furrowed. That's strange. I never gave her your contact information. We both realized something at the same time. I immediately called Zhao Feng. Check Zhang Xiaoyan's recent call records. 5 minutes later, Zhao Feng called back. An unknown number contacted her last night. Call lasted 2 minutes. I traced it. It's Gu Jiaojiao's burner phone. A trap. Gu Jiaojiao's clearly desperate, trying to use Zhang Xiaoyan to lure me out. Cancel tomorrow's meeting, Suya said decisively. No. I clutched the slip of paper. This is exactly the opportunity one need. Late at night, I stood alone on the company rooftop, gazing at the city lights. The door opened, and Suya walked in, holding 2 cups of coffee. Knew you'd still be here. She handed me a coffee. Everything arranged for tomorrow? I nodded. Zhao Feng will have people protecting Zhang, Xiaoyan covertly. The police are also ready. As soon as Gu Jiaojiao shows up. Qi Shuyong. Suya suddenly looked directly into my eyes. Who exactly are you? The coffee cup trembled slightly in my hand. What do you mean? You know too many things you shouldn't. She took a step forward. Huachong Tech, the stock market crash, Zhou Hao's dirty secrets. It's like you've read the script beforehand. I gave a light chuckle. Maybe I really am back from the future. It was meant as a joke, but Suya didn't smile. She suddenly reached out, her fingertips lightly brushing the scar on my wrist. This injury, she said softly, doesn't look like it's from a bicycle accident. More like a cut from falling from a height. I froze. In my past life, I jumped from the 40th floor. Shattered glass left a permanent scar on my wrist. But the body in this timeline shouldn't have this scar. Suya, E. The phone rang jarringly. It was Zhao Feng. Major discovery. Gu Jiaojiao went to the Zhou Properties archives tonight and took a file marked QZH. Now she's gone to a hotel near the airport. Isn't her flight tomorrow? I understood immediately. She's running early. Notify the police. We're heading over now. Hanging up, I grabbed my jacket. So you block my way. Wait, it's too dangerous. If she's cornered. That's exactly what I want. I pulled my arm free from her grasp. 10 years of waiting. It's time for it to end. Before the elevator doors closed, I saw Suya standing there, an unreadable expression on her face. Like worry, but also like some kind of realization. The rain started again. This time, it would wash away all the bloodstains and lies. The corridor of the airport hotel was laid with thick carpet, completely absorbing the sound of footsteps. I stood before room 1218, glancing at the location on my phone. Gu Jiaojiao's signal was indeed coming from this room. Zhao Feng's voice came through my earpiece. The police have surrounded the entire floor. Zhang Xiaoyan is safe, down in a police car. I took a deep breath and knocked. Housekeeping. No response. I knocked again. Miss Gu, there's a delivery for you at the front desk. The lock clicked, and the door opened a crack, the security chain still fastened. One of Gu Jiaojiao's eyes appeared in the gap, her pupil contracting sharply. It's you. She tried to slam the door shut, but I forced my way in first, my shoulder hitting the doorframe with a dull ache. The room was a mess. Several open suitcases lay sprawled on the bed, clothes and documents scattered everywhere. Gu Jiaojiao stumbled backward, clutching a file folder tightly, her face pale as paper. Catching a flight, I glanced at the plane ticket on the nightstand. Vancouver, taking off in an hour. Get out. Her voice was shrill, her right hand stealthily reaching under the pillow. Or I'll scream. I sneered. Go ahead. Let's see who gets here faster, security or the police. I took a step forward. What's that in your hand? She suddenly pulled a small pistol from under the pillow, aiming it at me with trembling hands. Don't come any closer. I know you set this up. Zhou Hao, the company, it was all you. I stopped, staring at the gun. In my past life's final moments, I too had been cornered like this, only holding a wine glass, not a weapon. What's in the QZH file? I asked directly. About my father. Gu Jiaojiao's lips trembled, the gun barrel dipping slightly. You know. I know Zhou Hao killed him. I took another step forward. Now I want the details. She suddenly laughed, a terrifyingly twisted smile. You think Zhou Hao was the mastermind? She waved the file folder. Your father discovered evidence of Qin Jiangwo and Director Li's corruption. They were the ones behind everything. Zhou Hao was just the enforcer. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Old Qin, the old man who had helped me in my past life and favored me in this one? The proof. My voice was hoarse. Just as Gu Jiaojiao was about to speak, police sirens wailed outside. She looked out the window in panic, and I took the chance to lunge at her. The gun went off, the bullet grazing my ear and hitting the wall. We both fell to the ground. The file folder flew open, papers scattering everywhere. I pinned her wrist and wrestled the gun away. Gu Jiaojiao struggled beneath me, her carefully styled hair falling loose, the scent of expensive perfume mixing with the sour smell of sweat. "Let me go. You lunatic," she screamed, her nails scratching my cheek. The door burst open, and police officers rushed in. I was pulled aside as Gu Jiaojiao was forced to the ground and handcuffed. She was still screaming, her voice now hoarse. "Qi Shuyang, you'll regret this. Qin Zhangwo won't let you get away with it." An officer picked up the scattered papers and handed one to me. "Is this what you were looking for?" It was a yellowed project acceptance form, dated the day after my father disappeared. In the signature field, Qin Zhangwo's name stood out starkly, next to Director Li's approval. Project compliant, hazards eliminated. At the top of the form, the project name read, West City Industrial Zone Underground Pipe Network Renovation. My vision blurred. Had old Qin helped me in my past life out of guilt? Why had he approached me in this life? "Mr. Qi." The officer looked at me with concern. "Do you need medical assistance?" I shook my head, pointing at the scattered documents. This is all evidence." 3 months later, in court, Defendant Zhou Hao, found guilty of intentional homicide, organizing and leading a mafia-style organization, kidnapping, and illegal business operations, considering all offenses, is sentenced to life imprisonment, deprived of political rights for life. Zhou Hao's face was ashen. Upon hearing the verdict, his legs gave way, and he had to be held up by the bailiffs to stand. His gaze swept over the gallery, pausing on my face for a second, filled with pure hatred. Defendant Gu Jiaojiao, found guilty of embezzlement, misappropriation of funds, and harboring a criminal, is sentenced to 15 years imprisonment. When Gu Jiaojiao heard the verdict, she suddenly turned to me, her meticulously made-up face contorted. "Qi Shuyang, you think you've won?" "Qin Zhangwo." The judge banged the gavel hard. "Order." Bailiffs quickly escorted Gu Jiaojiao from the courtroom. As she passed me, she suddenly broke free and shrieked at me. "He's been using you, just like he used your father." Her voice faded away, and the courtroom fell silent again. Sitting in the plaintiff's seat, I felt a strange emptiness. 10 years of vengeance, ending just like this? A hand rested gently on my shoulder. Suya stood behind me, her eyes holding an emotion I couldn't decipher. "It's over." I nodded, but Gu Jiaojiao's words echoed in my mind. Was it really over? Qin Zhangwo's villa was nestled in the hills on the outskirts of the city, a tranquil setting. As I rang the doorbell, it began to rain. Old Qin himself opened the door. He looked much older than the last time I'd seen him, but his posture was still erect. "Ah, little Qi, I was just thinking of having you over for tea." In the living room, steam rose from an Yixing clay teapot. Old Qin poured me a cup of tea, his movements still graceful and unhurried. "You won the case. Congratulations." "You already know." I took the cup but didn't drink. It was all over the news. He sighed. "That boy, Zhou Hao, he went too far." The sound of the rain grew louder, drumming against the windows. I put down my teacup and asked directly, "Old Qin, did you know my father?" His hand trembled almost imperceptibly, spilling tea onto the rosewood table. "Of course. We were university classmates, and we worked on a project together later. The West City Underground Pipe Network." The air in the room seemed to freeze. Old Qin slowly lowered the teapot, the wrinkles on his face deepening in the shadows. "What did she tell you?" I didn't answer, instead taking the project acceptance form from my bag and pushing it towards him. Old Qin stared at the paper for a long time, then suddenly stood up and walked toward the safe. With his back to me, he entered the combination and took out a manila envelope. 10 years ago, your father discovered evidence that corners were cut on the project." His voice suddenly sounded ancient. The materials were substandard. If there were an earthquake, the entire underground gas pipeline network in the West City district would explode like a string of firecrackers. I clenched my fists. "So you killed him?" "No." Old Qin spun around sharply. "It was Director Li. He hired Zhou Hao to handle it. I found out too late." He walked back, handing me the envelope. "This is the evidence I've gathered over the years. I had intended to take it to my grave." I opened the envelope. Inside were photographs, cassette tapes, and ledgers. The topmost photo showed my father tied to a chair, his face bloody, but still alive. The date was the day before he disappeared. "Director Li and Zhou Hao thought your father had hidden the evidence somewhere, so." Old Sheen's voice choked. By the time I got there, I could only salvage these. Why didn't you go to the police? I tried. Old Sheen gave a bitter smile. But Director Lee had connections. Without sufficient proof. He gestured towards the materials. So I held on to them, waiting for the right time. I looked at the old man I once respected, complex emotions churning within me. My target for revenge had suddenly multiplied, yet I felt an unprecedented exhaustion. Why didn't you tell me? Old Sheen shook his head. I failed your father, and I failed you. In this life, I just wanted to make amends. This life, my blood ran cold. What? What did you say? Old Sheen's gaze suddenly became remarkably clear. Qi Shuyang, do you think you're the only one who was reborn? The rain sounded like drums, beating against my eardrums. Old Sheen took an old photo album from the bookshelf and opened it to a middle page. It was a solo picture of my father, dated below, May 18th, 2010, Genoa's last photo. After your father died, I had nightmares every night. Old Sheen said softly, until one night, 3 years ago, I had a heart attack. When I woke up, I found myself back 10 years in the past. The first thing I did was look for your father, hoping to prevent the tragedy, but it was too late. He had already disappeared the day before. My mind reeled. Old Sheen was also reborn, and earlier than me. Then I found you. Old Sheen continued. I tried everything to get close to you, to help you, hoping to atone. Why didn't you just tell me the truth? I didn't dare. He slumped back down. I was afraid you'd look at me the way you are now. With hatred. The rain stopped. An array of sunlight broke through the clouds. I looked at the old man's stooped back, suddenly unsure whether to hate him or forgive him. This evidence is enough to convict Director Lee. I finally said, standing up. As for you, I'll consider it. As I was leaving, Old Sheen called out, Qi Shuyang, rebirth is a second chance. Don't waste it on guilt like I did. My father's grave was covered in lush green grass. I knelt before the headstone, burning copies of the case files and the evidence Old Sheen had provided, one by one. Flames consumed the paper, ashes scattering in the wind. Dad, the culprits have all faced justice. I whispered, my fingers tracing the cold stone, including Director Lee, the mastermind back then. He was arrested yesterday in Hainan. Footsteps sounded behind me. Suya approached, holding a black umbrella, and stood silently beside me. Raindrops pattered on the umbrella like distant drumbeats. Is it all over? She asked. I nodded, suddenly overcome by an exhaustion I'd never felt before. I rested my forehead against my father's headstone, my shoulders trembling uncontrollably. 10 years of hatred, an obsession spanning 2 lifetimes, melted into scalding tears at that moment. Suya gently placed a hand on my back, saying nothing. Her presence, like the umbrella, silently shielded me from the storm. 1 year later, at the coffee shop where we first met, I pushed open the door. Suya was already sitting in her usual spot, 2 cups of coffee on the table. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating her face, much softer than when we first met a year ago. Finished the article, I sat down, gesturing to the notebook beside her. It runs tomorrow. She pushed a coffee towards me, just confirming a few last details. I took a sip, still an Americano, no sugar, bitter with a tang of sourness, just like this story. Are you really going to publish the part about Qin Jiangwo? I asked. Suyanadith. He provided crucial evidence. His merits and faults should be recorded separately. She paused. Readers have the right to know the truth. I gazed out the window at the pedestrians hurrying by, each heading towards their own destination. For the first time since my rebirth, I felt truly relaxed. Suya, there's something I've never told you. I took a notebook from my bag, about why I could predict so many things. She took the notebook and opened it to the first page. It contained everything I'd recorded since my rebirth, events from the future, memories of my past life, and the changes in this one. This is... Her finger stopped on a page describing how, in my past life, she had been disfigured by an acid attack. I'm from 10 years in the future. I said plainly, or rather, I already lived through those 10 years. In another timeline, I lost to Zhou Hao and Gu Jiaojiao and ended up jumping off a building. When I opened my eyes again, I was back at the engagement party. Revealing this secret felt like a huge weight off my shoulders. Whether she believed me or not, at least I didn't have to pretend anymore. Suya's reaction was unexpected. She gently closed the notebook, reached out, took my wrist, and rubbed the scar there with her thumb. I know. What? Many of the future events you described were news stories I reported on 10 years ago. She smiled, especially in the financial section. Only the outcomes were different from your memories. My eyes widened. Are you saying I'm not reborn? She shook her head. But as a journalist, I'm used to verifying every detail. Your predictions were too precise, so precise it was like you'd lived through it. The sunlight suddenly seemed blinding. I blinked. Why didn't you expose me? Because everyone has their secrets. Besides, seeing what you're doing now, I think you deserve a second chance. The coffee shop door opened, the wind chime tinkling brightly. A young woman walked in, ponytail, white shirt, jeans. It was Zhang Xiaoyan. She saw us and nodded with a smile. She'll be working at the foundation after graduation. Suya said softly. A very bright kid. I looked at Zhang Xiaoyan, remembering the clues her father left before his death. In a way, Zhang Jianjun's death had guided me to the truth about my own father. And now, his daughter would work at the anti-corporate fraud foundation we established, helping more victims like us. Sometimes fate is like a circle, the end returning to the beginning. All right, Suya took an envelope from her bag. The schedule for the foundation's anniversary celebration next week. See if there are any changes needed. I opened the envelope. Inside, besides the schedule, was an exquisite card, a draft design for a wedding invitation. I looked up. Suya was watching me with an ambiguous smile. This is, you promised, once everything was over. A faint blush rose on her cheeks. I took her hand. Sunlight shone through the coffee cups, casting warm patches of light on the table. Rebirth gave me the chance for revenge, but what truly gave me a new life was the woman before me, who saw through all my pretenses yet still chose to believe. This time, I said softly, I'll live well.